All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Talking Buffalo. We are on a time crunch right now. The computer sucks. StreamYard sucks. My equipment sucks. Everything sucks today. We were kind of already into another episode and things crashed, so we're doing a redo. Matt Warren, SB Nation, as always, joins me for this Wednesday show. I already know you're doing good. Let the world know you're doing well. It's cold outside. It's freaking snowing in Batavia. Freaking snowing a little bit in Buffalo. All this shit sucks. I want to dive right into this episode.
Okay, let's go.
We're on a time crunch today. We got a hard out, both of us. So we're going to dive right in. I want to spend time today talking about the Bills' primary 2025 concerns with this roster. And I got to say it again. I'm going to be really clear right now. This ain't no Bills hater episode. This is no Bills hater podcast. The Bills did a really, really good job this offseason in terms of in-house extensions. They got the big deal done with Josh. They've made a huge investment in their defensive line via free agency. They got Josh Palmer in their midst, etc. Lots and lots of good things going on with the Buffalo Bills. So don't get this twisted. This is not a hater episode at all. But there are concerns with this roster. And I say as things stand right now, because some things that we might talk about today may get addressed before the season starts, as early as the draft, trades, post-draft signings, things of that nature. So there's still some time for things to change there, but this is as things stand right now. But real quick, before that, Matt, we were talking about this before the computer crashed out. Pro Bowl center Conor McGovern was on Cover One on Monday. Props to them, that film room. Again, they're really crushing it, man. They're getting a lot of players, current players, to come on their show and break down film with them. Man, props to them for that. But they also had a conversation with him, and it was regarding extension talks. And I thought Conor McGovern had an incredibly interesting quote, one that I kind of didn't see coming. I want to get your thoughts on this, what he said. And I quote, this is Conor McGovern on Cover One. He says, "We've had talks. As soon as I got back from the Pro Bowl, talks started going. Tabled that for right now. I'd love to stay here, but you know how football is sometimes. Business doesn't work out." What are your thoughts on that? That's pretty interesting. Conor McGovern has said that they've had talks. Pretty much they tabled it, really got nowhere. And even, this is football's a business. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Doesn't sound like, now he could get an extension, but it doesn't sound too promising. What are your thoughts when you heard that?
It makes sense that it's tabled at this point in early April when, the draft is coming up and the Bills' entire personnel staff is all focused on the draft. The fact that it didn't get done in, say, February or March shows me that McGovern isn't coming off of his number, unlike we saw with Greg Rousseau or Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford. Like, we kept seeing that those guys were coming in a little bit under what the expected market was for those players. And so, Brandon Beane probably went to them and said, "Hey, here's our number this offseason. You can take it and we'll sign it right now, or we'll move on to the next person." And just like we saw with James Cook isn't coming off of his number. Conor McGovern probably didn't come off of his number either. Josh Allen's the only one that signed a deal at the top of the market this offseason with the Buffalo Bills. Everybody else is taking that kind of below market deal. So it makes a lot of sense if McGovern's kind of holding out. His values probably is as high as it's going to be after coming off a Pro Bowl. And so he might not want to give the Bills a hometown discount right now and see how it plays out. And that's kind of what that quote sounds like to me.
You hear something like that and maybe does it change potentially what the Bills may do in terms of the draft? Like maybe this elevates a little bit the Bills taking an interior offensive lineman, a center at some point in this draft, where if they were pretty confident or even close to say getting something done with Conor, maybe they don't do that. They drafted Cedric Van Pran Granger last year in the 5th round. I don't know if they view him as the guy who's going to take over when McGovern leaves. Do you think potentially, well, at least potentially, this certainly could change the mindset of the draft, right?
I mean, theoretically, yes, but I don't necessarily think they would have drafted, say, like a 2nd round center to groom to replace Conor McGovern, this offseason anyway. And so Van Pan Granger is like the grooming prospect right now. And if a year from now he ends up leaving, then we'll really find out what they think of Van Pan Granger, or if they, draft somebody higher, or they sign a free agent, or if they just go with him. So, I mean, they have good depth on the interior right now. They've got developmental guys. They've got Alec Anderson who can play inside if he needs to. So
Sure.
I don't think it's necessarily going to move it way up the importance ladder in the NFL draft. And obviously the Bills knew about this like a couple months ago, and we're just finding out. So it wouldn't like quote unquote change their draft positioning right now because they already knew about it. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's dive into some like I said, concerns. Well, at least he's concerned me. Maybe they don't concern you as much, or maybe they don't concern everybody who's listening to the show today. I want to start, and these aren't necessarily in specific order of importance. I just think these are all specific concerns that I have right now with this roster and this team as things stand. I feel like they're taking and we'll start here, a pretty big leap of faith that Dalton Kincaid and especially Keon Coleman take big leaps, big steps this year. I say that because of as of now, they let Amari Cooper walk, who's still unsigned, by the way. Matt Collins leaves. They signed Josh Palmer. Um, yeah, I really don't know. Maybe that's a lateral thing, but they haven't really done nothing significant to upgrade because I think that they're counting on Keon Coleman a lot to really step up in that receiver room. Last year, 29 catches, 556 yards, 4 touchdowns. The good news is he certainly showed flashes. Week 7 and 8, Tennessee, Seattle, those 2 games, 9 catches for 195 and a touchdown. That looked like the guy that you wanted to begin the second round. Conversely, coming back from the injury, just not effective, and he was literally useless in the playoffs. 3 catches for 22 yards in 3 games. Let's just call it what it was. Completely useless. Dalton Kincaid fought injuries last year, nowhere near as effective as he was in 2023, where he had 73 catches for 673 yards. He was second on the team in receptions in 2023. Do you feel that way right now? Like they're putting a big chunk of faith in guys right now who, I mean, Kincaid has shown it. Keon really, other than a game or two, hasn't, but they're by not going out and getting a big ticket receiver. And maybe they do in a draft, but assuming they don't, right now, it kind of feels like they're putting a lot of faith in 2 young guys really stepping up. Not that that's wrong to do, but we haven't seen it enough. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of depth on day 2 of the draft at wide receiver. So I could definitely see them, heading into the weekend with one of the wide receivers already on, their roster. But I think Coleman, Beane has said it so many times this offseason. You have to remember that Coleman is only 21 years old right now. And,
Sure.
he had to learn how to be a pro. And we saw that when he got benched for whatever it was, missing meetings or being late to meetings, so
Yeah.
he had to learn all that stuff last year. If he actually learned it and comes into training camp with that kind of full off season, comes into the regular season having understood those lessons that he needed to learn as a rookie, I think they can count on him, and really only Brandon Beane and Keon Coleman know that at this point. As well as other people in the organization. For Kincaid, I'm really not as concerned with him as I am with Coleman taking the next step, because you just said he did it in 2023 when he had an 80% catch rate, 73 catches, 673 yards. So his catch rate went down to 56%. And we saw him drop that one, obviously in the AFC Championship game. TJ Hawkinson's career low catch percentage is 66%. Sam Laporta's is 71%. Trey McBride is 75%. So you Kincaid down there at 56%. Whatever it is, whether it's probably not Josh Allen throwing really crappy balls, it's probably not on the offensive design. So whatever it was that was plaguing Dalton Kincaid last year really needs to go away, and he needs to get back to that rookie season. And so I'm not as worried about him because he has shown it, but that drop off from the catch rates from his rookie season to his second season is very concerning.
Yeah, it's alarming, and injuries played a role for sure.
Right.
But
Yeah.
his brain wasn't injured and his hands weren't injured. There were definitely some untimely drops. None so more, of course, than the AFC Championship game. I'm going to be honest. through all of free agency and these extensions and cuts and draft prospects, I kind of forgot about Dalton Kincaid dropping that pass in Kansas City last year. So thanks for the reminder, man. Thanks a lot. Um, quickly too with receivers, I don't want to move on. Taking a receiver in the draft, very likely to happen. But here's the thing: when you say Keon, Shakir, Samuel, and Palmer is your four receivers, what role does
Right.
say if you take a receiver? Let's just say they take one on day two, okay, with one of their 2 seconds, or maybe they trade down or trade up. Let's say the third round, third or early fourth round, either or. That's where they go get a receiver. Okay, where does that put them in the mix? Like to be a top, I don't see a top four receiver in this draft unless it's a higher guy who could push somebody down. And if he does, who gets pushed out? It's probably Curtis Samuel, I would have to assume. And is this guy a rookie going to be yet a fifth receiver that pretty much has zero special teams value in terms of coverage, blocking, special teams coverage, kick coverage,
Mhm.
punt coverage, things like that. A gunner on special teams. I'm not sure that everybody's assuming the Bills are going to take a receiver. I'm
Oh,
other than
I'm
maybe
not. Like,
a developmental guy later in the draft who could play special teams, I'm not sold that the Bills are gonna take a receiver anywhere in the first 4 rounds of this draft.
yeah, I'm definitely not of the opinion that the Bills are going to be like, overdrafting a wide receiver in this to get one because of what you said. Like that, the person that they're picking would probably be a game day inactive unless one of those top four wide receivers was injured. And so I just don't see necessarily the value there. They have developmental wide receivers like Terrell. Maybe they hate Terrell Shavers. I don't know. Maybe they, but like there's just not a really good roster spot for that, especially considering they still haven't replaced those special teams guys that Sean McDermott was talking about at the owners' meetings. Like they're going to need a roster spot or two for some special teams guys, some gunners, like things like that. And if you're drafting a say a second round wide receiver, a third round wide receiver, they're probably not going to be that person.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Now, the exception could be if they made some kind of, "Whoa, didn't see that coming," trade. If they were
Mhm.
to trade for Olave, if they were to trade for Addison from the Vikings, who I don't know how that keeps getting tied to the Bills, but somehow I keep hearing about that. I saw Bovada, the Vegas betting site, has the Bills as the trading favorite but why would you trade him? I don't get that, at least not now anyway. Yeah, I don't see it other than a big ticket receiver. I just don't see the Bills investing a second or a third round pick in a receiver for what we just talked about. All right, let's move on to some other stuff here too. Um, me now, my opinion might differ than yours on this specifically, maybe more than the others. I am far, and I mean far from sold on the Bill safety room. I'm not bought in at all. I know Sean McDermott is a big Telerap guy. He went out of his way to single him out at the owners' meetings, how important he is. I look at him as a guy who gets hurt too often. I mean, we've seen it now. There's a handful of players that they get hurt a lot. Taylor Rapp is one of them. That injury in Kansas City hurt. Then he missed he didn't play in the AFC playoffs last year either. Two straight, basically two straight elimination losses. Taylor Rapp wasn't even available. That hurts. And also, I remember a lot of plays where he wasn't that good this year. I don't think he was that good of a safety. I thought he was, we'll call him adequate. I think adequate could be the word I'd be looking for. He was adequate out there, made a couple nice plays for sure, but he got beat a lot. And I just don't think he was all that effective. Cole Bishop, who was a second round pick last year, I can't shake a quote from Jim Onis, and maybe I should, and maybe I shouldn't give a shit what Jim says, but I keep going back to that podcast he did with Tyler Dunn on Go Long, and him basically declaring that this dude was terrible, and he said he's basically a linebacker trying to play safety. I don't know. I'm not sold on him. Okay, you know how I feel about Damar Hamlin. Fine on the roster. Don't put him out there to start. I don't want to see that. Forrest, the free agent signing, I like that, but who knows where that goes. So there's a lot of times we like a signing in March and it doesn't play out. Look at Mike Edwards, the way things happen with him last year at safety. And I don't think this team, because of their other needs and what they have with Bishop being a second round pick and Lincoln Rapp, I don't think they're going to address safety early enough for it to matter. Like Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, if he's there in round 2, I would sprint to the podium to go get them. I don't think the Bills are going to do that, though. I think they want to address other stuff. I don't love this safety room. I'm not even sure that I like this safety room. Is my level of concern higher than yours?
Well, I mean, I'm not sold on them, but I'm also not necessarily worried about them. So I'm kind of like, okay. Like if they trotted out the same, 3 guys as last year, plus Forrest on top of that, like okay. Like again, like with Sean McDermott, like I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt on very few things, but safety play and like secondary play in general is kind of like where I would give him the benefit of the doubt. And so if he's okay with the way that the room's currently constructed, then I'm more kind of willing to be like, okay, I guess like this is your bread and butter, or you can roll with it. Same with Bobby Babish too. That's where he started too. So
I got so there's 4 safeties on this roster right now. The four we talked about, I should say
uh-huh.
anyway. You combine them to me, that's 1 starter. I think I got 1 starter right now. I feel
Okay.
good if one of them started. If Rapp or Bishop had a training camp battle and one of them started alongside, say, Xavier Watts, or there's a couple other highly touted safeties that I feel like could come in and be day 1 starters. And I don't know, maybe I still have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer syndrome, where I was just spoiled and coddled for a handful of years, having 2 of the best safeties in the NFL in tandem. I think that the Bills safety position right now is adequate at best and mediocre at worst right now. So I'm going to remain concerned until I see otherwise, unless they do something there. One more, then I want to get to a quick break too. Daquan Jones. Now, I do expect this to be addressed early
Oh
in the
yeah.
draft, but right now, again, Daquan Jones, his best days, maybe even his effective days, are definitely. I don't say definitely, probably behind him. I don't love the defensive tackle position outside of Ed Oliver. I don't think anybody does. It's obviously going to be addressed in the draft, although you're going to be counting on rookies. Daquan Jones, is there a good chance that you might have seen the last of Daquan Jones pending? Let's say the Bills take a guy at 30, all right, or whoever it could be. It could be the kid from Ohio State. It could be Kenneth Grant. It could be a myriad of guys early in the draft. Do you think if that does that push Daquan Jones out the door? Or is Daquan still around? I mean, he could be good depth. I just don't think he's a solid starting caliber defensive tackle anymore.
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I like the idea they don't owe Daquan Jones any money this season if they got,
Mhm.
or sorry, they do owe him 2.25 million in guaranteed salary if they did release him, but he's likely to sign on somewhere for something like half of that at least. And so like it wouldn't be like death to their salary cap. They would actually clear a little bit of cap space by releasing him, and they could do it anytime between now and the start of the season. So it's not really a big deal, financially speaking. I mean, but
Right.
I don't know if they have any depth behind whoever they draft. So like maybe if they double dipped, they did the Kyle Williams, Sean McCargo double dip, or the Kair Elam, Christian Benford double dip at the defensive tackle position. Like then maybe I could see a situation where he would be gone. But I just think their run defense has been so bad that to cut, I mean, I guess one of your better players over the last few years without like a clear cut replacement for him would be a little bit scary. So I do think he's going to be here through training camp at the very least because it won't cost him any additional money. Um, but I could definitely see a situation or a scenario where we get through training camp and he's like third on the depth chart, and then they end up cutting him or trying to trade him for a song or something like that. In August.
Back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation. Some Tuesday breaking news. If you're a Buffalo Bisons fan and you wanted to go watch a little AAA minor league baseball on Tuesday, forget about it. The game was postponed, not because of rain, but because of cold temperatures and quote, freezing wind chill. Freezing wind chill in April. It is literally, by the way, the wind chill right now in Buffalo is 12 degrees
Yeah, it's
as
cold.
we record this on Tuesday. It's freaking cold. That's an understatement. All right, let's continue here. We've talked about some of the concerns. For me, again, having two guys, not one, but two guys that you signed in free agency serving 6 game suspensions, not to mention Joey Bosa, very likely going to be coddled early in terms of his play percentage. I think it's a bigger deal than people think. I've seen a lot of people. I know you and I have hit on this a little bit on this show already,
Mhm.
but just so many people out there that say, well, it's all about January. And I keep saying, well, you got to get to January. You
Right.
can't count on, you can't count on being 4-2 or 5-1 through 6 games and not having to worry about it. You got to win early in the season as
Mhm.
well. Um, Having two guys out for 6 games, having a defensive edge who's going to be brought along slowly, that concerns me. And it also concerns me that, even if they do have, and they're going to address these positions in the draft, of course, but still, they're rookies at the end of the day, man. You're gonna have to depend on Javon Sullivan and Dwayne Carter early in the season, I think, maybe more than otherwise you would want to. So that's concerning to me, Matt.
With good reason. I think we touched on like the Bills are going to play at least one or two very significant games in those first 6 games, whether it's
Mhm.
opening Sunday night or opening Monday night, or one of the like the first Thursday night football game in week 2, like they did this year against Miami. Like they're going to play. It's either going to be a division game or like one of those like AFC contender games, like against the Ravens or the Chiefs or whatever, in those first 6 weeks. And so they're going to be missing, significant investments for at least one or two of their most significant games for the season. So that's obviously a concern. I do think that they're going to want to see that kind of next step from Dwayne Carter. Um, we kind of sort of saw that with AJ Epinesa when they drafted him and how he completely changed his entire body by the start of the second season. He changed his entire playing style by the second season and got into what the Bills saw him as a potential player. So, we saw Spencer Brown really, take a big step between his early seasons and his more recent seasons. So we've seen them develop some of these like second and third round picks. We've also seen them go the opposite way and like they trade Boogie Basham for nothing, and so they're going to count on him. It's up to him to see if he can step up.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you said Boogie Basham too, because when it comes to Dwayne Carter right now, I'm far from sold, and I'm not sure you want him to take that next step. I'm not sure that he's the guy who's just going to take the next step. I didn't love the
Yeah.
pick when they made it, and I certainly don't love it now. Now, to be fair, we could have sat here. You look at some of these guys who just got extensions. Khalil Shakir was none special his rookie year. Terrell Bernard was certainly none special his rookie year. Dorian Williams was none special his rookie year, and these guys are really, they've stepped up
Mhm.
they've developed, and you really hope that Dwayne Carter can fall into that realm. But to your point, there's also guys like Boogie Basham or Kyrie Elam that just didn't make that leap. And I'm very concerned that Dwayne Carter is going to be that guy. Even if that, and they're going to take two defensive linemen in this draft. Two of their first 4 picks, I'll bet anybody anything right now. Two of their first 4 picks are going to be defensive linemen. The guys we just talked about, Daquan Jones being near
Mhm.
the end, if not at the end. Um, Larry Ogunjobi's only a 1 year guy. Joey Bosa's only a 1 year guy. AJ Epenesa's in the last year of his contract. The Bills are going to address defensive line early. This is going to be especially in the beginning of the season, a very young defensive line. So that's always going to be concerning. Next position here, and this is surely going to be addressed as well, but right now, as things stand, boundary cornerback position, razor thin. Christian Benford, one of the best corners, I believe, in the NFL. And of the extensions, I still think that that's the one where people like to say the word, hometown discount. I'm not sure Chris Benford really did that, but he gave them it's
I
a
think he
team
did.
yeah, sure. It's a team-friendly deal. We can all agree on that. Like, we expected it to be
Yes.
more. It's a very team-friendly deal considering the player, I believe anyway. He's a stud. Dane Jackson is an NFL corner. He's DeMar Hamlin at safety to me. They're one the
Okay.
same.
Fair.
Good on the roster. Don't need them as my starter. That's it. That's it. Jamarcus Ingram, no. Jamarcus Ingram's great value. He'll be on this roster, but that's because he's versatile. He can play special teams. He can do a lot of things, but you don't want him being your outside boundary starting cornerback right now. So obviously, this is a concern, and they're going to draft somebody. But Matt, also to that point, rookies are just a concern, period, aren't they? Defensive tackle, edge. Again, a lot of these guys that we talk about with the Bills that have become good players, they weren't great rookies, you know?
Yeah.
So that's concerning. Corner, what they're just they surely don't seem to be worried about it right now by signing Dane Jackson. Say, yeah, we'll see what happens with this draft or whatever. So maybe I'm more worried than Brandon Beane right now. But corner to me is certainly an area of concern right now, anyway.
It should be, and they need to add one, probably two boundary cornerbacks to this roster over the next month. And one we obviously think is going to come in the draft, and I think they are going to sign another free agent. But they're running out of like starting caliber options. You got Rasul Douglas and Kendall Fuller. A guy named Stephon Gilmore is still out there.
Sure.
Gilmore is the only one that would factor into the compensatory pick formula, so because Fuller was cut by the Dolphins, and so maybe they're waiting for Gilmore to not count towards the compensatory and sign him at the end of the month. I don't really know, but like I feel like they're going to add a free agent and a draft pick at some point, maybe two draft picks like they did with Elam and Benford, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I, I again, I'd be willing to bet one of their first two picks are going to be a corner in this draft. I'd be
Yeah,
willing
I would
to
too.
drop some serious money on it. Trey Amos is the guy that is continuing to get a lot of steam out there. I seen Field Yates was talking with Matt Bovee on a Channel 7 segment, and Matt asked him about a guy who just feels like a great fit for the Bills, and he said, Amos. Anyway, yeah, and look, you can throw Rasul Douglas, like, and then I mix of those veterans that are still out there. I feel like
Mhm.
teams at this point are pretty much so close to the draft. They're like, all right, listen, guys, we're going to see what happens in the draft, and then depending on what we need, we'll circle back around to you. Feels about right, correct?
And Douglas would count towards a compensatory pick for other teams too. So I mean, if they wanted to wait on him, like that's like I think April 29th is the deadline for that, so they could sign him after that and not have to not lose a compensatory pick because of it.
Yeah. All right. Three more things I want to get to here in the last 15 minutes. One of them has just been beaten to death. But I mean, at this point, you're fooling yourself if you don't have any concern whatsoever with it. And that's a James Cook issue. He's the whole house thing. I don't know if that's a big deal or not. Maybe I don't know. That's posturing, whatever it may be, but it's not a good look. It doesn't feel good. I think we can all agree on that. It may mean nothing, but it don't feel good. It certainly didn't feel good to hear Brandon Beane's comments about at the owners' meetings. It just doesn't seem like an extension with him is going to happen. He's due to make about 5 million this year. He's in the last year of his contract. He knows that big money is awaiting him in 2026. Very likely anyway, unless he gets hurt, which kind of goes to my point. Between wanting more money and not getting it, fear of getting injured and losing out on millions in a free agent contract because he's a lame duck in his final year of his deal. Um, I think the expectation, he ain't showing up to any of the voluntary shit. That we already know that. He may not show up to training camp too. He may be an unhappy soldier. Worst case, this could morph into a Hassan Reddick situation where the dude says, you know what, I'll lose this money this year. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm going to save money. And then if the team works out a deal, he plays half a season. Is he going to play to not get hurt like Hassan Reddick did with the Jets last year? It didn't really cost him all that much. He got a $14 million 1 year deal with Tampa 2 minutes into free agency. I'm concerned about this. I think a trade is at least on the table. I don't like it. I hope it don't happen. It's probably not going to happen, but I do think it's on the table now where I didn't before. I am moderately to significantly concerned about the James Cook situation at this point. What about you?
I've been pretty even keel about it the entire time, and I'm not concerned about it very much. It's not like I have I have a feeling he's going to come to training camp and do the hold in thing. He doesn't want to get charged or fined whatever it is, $40,000 a day to miss training camp. But he probably isn't going to practice. He probably won't play in the preseason, and then he'll start ramping up in September. He needs to go out and prove that he's worth $15 million to the other teams that are going to sign him too. I think if he wants $10 million or $11 million, I think he doesn't have to have a great season. He doesn't but I also think the Bills are probably offering him $10 million a season right now. Um, if he wants that 15 million, he's going to have to play his ass off this season. Um, so I kind of sort of disagree with what you're saying, like that he's gone, like he can go and just like half-ass it in the 2025 season and still get that money. I think he can half-ass it and get like 10 million, but I don't think he can half-ass it and get 15.
Even if he half-asses it and gets 10 to 12 million, and there's always one team that's going to overpay in free agency. You
Yeah,
get if you're a big name and you're a good player, you get the free agency. You're going to sign on the first day or second day of free agency. Somebody's going to give you more than most people think. And in my opinion, and I hope it don't happen, but I'm just saying I could see a scenario where he says, you know what, I'm due 5 million this year. Even if I lose 3 of that 5 this year and I sit out half the season and then I dog it when I come back because I'm just playing to not get hurt, somebody's going to give him a 3-year, $35 million contract, I feel like, in free agency regardless. So if he
maybe.
not, my concern is this: if he doesn't get that security of an extension now, that I don't know that you're going to get the above and beyond. We'll say above and beyond version of James Cook, if that's fair.
Yeah, and that's why I'm more risk averse than him. Anyways, I would sign the contract just like Shakir and Benford and all them did. Like I would bank the money now, use the money now, and worry about the big extension later. Like sign the 2-year deal, sign a 1-year extension for whatever 12 million, whatever it happens to be, and like get that secure the bag and like keep working towards that. But I still see like he also doesn't control how often he plays. And so if the Bills aren't going to put him on the field on third downs, like there's still going to be those lingering questions for whoever signs him, including Buffalo, about whether he can play that, full-time role, whether he can do all of the things that are going to be asked of him if he makes 15 million a year.
Last point about that, I would say ultimately I think the resolution for this year is going to be that they give him, I don't know if it's an extension or a pay raise. They're going to do something to maybe give him a better number for this year just to avoid the potential of what could happen, some of the stuff that I hit on. I think something's going to happen with his contract for this year. Okay. I don't think he's
Okay.
taking an extension, but they're going to do something for his contract this year. I'm not a capologist. I don't know how that works. Like, say if he's making 5, we're going to bump you up and we're going to give you 9.5 million for this year, and then we'll let you be a free agent. I don't know. Maybe they give him a I don't know how they do it. I'm not going to pretend I do. I think they're going to do something with his contract for this year. I think that's going to avoid that situation because I think they want to avoid that because I think what could happen is very real and could become very distracting, even though they got
What
Ray Davis and Ty Johnson.
Right. What the Giants did say with Saquon Barkley when he was unhappy is they gave him his money up front. They guaranteed it, gave him a bunch of incentives that he could reach that weren't in his contract to sort of make him happy. The problem with the Bills doing that with James Cook, well, they could certainly give him incentives and that wouldn't be an issue. But if if the Bills wanted to take that 5 million or whatever salary and give it to him up front, turn it into a signing bonus, like it's a lot harder if he doesn't show up to the regular season to get that money back. And so like he would have to be legitimately happy with that. And I just don't see how that would work unless they gave him a pay raise. And so now you're giving him a pay raise just because he's complaining that he's not making 15 million a year. And it's going to be less than 50 million a year. So I just think it kind of goes in this circle of I don't know what they could do to make him happy other than give him a multi-year extension for $15 million a year.
Well, put it this way, I don't know who his representation is, but they're definitely a problem to the Bills, and how much
Mm.
James Cook stands by whatever their agent tells him to do or representation tells him to do could determine how things play out. But anyway, it's a concern, which kind of leads, I got 2 more here. Kind of leads to something that you talked about last week that has really resonated with me in the weeks since. And we talked about the Bills extensions and all the good stuff that came with them. But then we also kind of talked about the vibes, the hungriness, the eye of the tiger, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
from Rocky 3 and shit like that. The vibes changing. That might be a little bit of a concern because this was a young team with guys who were coming into their 3rd year and 4-year contracts trying to get the bags. And now a lot of them did. Josh Allen's got the bag. Not that we're worried about Josh Allen wanting to win football
No.
games. Let's not be stupid here, folks. All right. He's got the girl, he's got the money, he's got the MVP, but he ain't got a Super Bowl, and you know that drives him for sure. I'm not saying this is going to be a team, and I know you're not either, that doesn't care. That's like we said last week. I think we used the Ricky Vaughn from Major League Two example, and you
Yeah.
go Hollywood, so to speak, and you lose that hunger. We're not saying that. I'm not saying that, but a little bit worried about the vibes changing. Matt Collins gone. James Cook hold in could be a problem. Jordan Phillips, high character guys that were with this team last year, probably not back. Well, Matt Collins definitely not back. Jordan Phillips probably not back. The culture, the vibes are going to change a little bit. That's always a little bit concerning because this was a team last year that overachieved, I think most people would say.
Mhm.
And vibes, I feel like had a little bit, at least a little bit of a part in that, no?
Yeah, and the chip on the shoulder thing is something that we've seen Sean McDermott lean into repeatedly over the years. And like, you can't be a front runner with a chip on your shoulder all the time. I mean, I guess luckily the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't even got to a Super Bowl, so like they still should have a very large chip on their shoulders collectively. But yeah, like Shakir's, Bernard Rousseau, even Josh Palmer and Hoyt, like all these guys signed their first big contract, so they're not necessarily going for that individual thing anymore. They're going more for like the team thing and team success, and so that it can just be a different type of motivation. Um, I- I'm not necessarily worried about it because like everyone I just mentioned seems like a high character guy that loves playing football, and Brandon Beane talks about that when he scouts guys too. Like that's probably the reason they signed Josh Allen or drafted Josh Allen over Josh Rosen. Like just get that vibe right from the start, and so I'm not necessarily worried about it, but it definitely is like something that's there that could, I don't know, they could settle a little bit, and I just don't want to see that.
Last one here. We got about 5 minutes left, and some people will strongly disagree with that because the Bills' offense was historically good last year. All right. And maybe they will be this year, especially if Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid are really good, like we talked about earlier in this show. But right now, I feel like there's just not an overall enough of a commitment to making life better for an easier, I should say, for Josh Allen. It feels like the strategy every week is Josh Allen. We're going to run the ball some, and then you got to go make some ridiculous plays, and you're pretty much you have to be the MVP. Like I would love to see this team say, you know what? Let's go get him a Chris Olave. Let's go get him a Jordan Addison. Let's go get him a. Although it'd be really risky, which would come to our he would be added to the concerns, but like a George Pickens type, like somebody who's got that kind of skill level. You know what I'm saying? Like a true and true number one wide receiver on this team. It just feels like you got a bunch of twos and threes. Everybody eats. It certainly worked for the most part. It worked last year. I'm concerned that they just put too much on Josh Allen's plate. If that makes any sense, and I would completely understand why somebody would say that I'm overreacting and that it's not a concern considering how good they were last year. They don't need the alpha Stephon Diggs type like they used to have. I still go give me a guy who could bail Josh Allen out when he makes a less than great throw.
Yeah, I do. And we obviously saw that in the AFC Championship game when Dalton Kincaid did not do that. But um, I do think that the Bills have given him a lot of help on the offensive line, and I for some reason this just popped into my Twitter feed. I don't know, like in the last week or so. But I looked. There was a comparison between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And I think Josh Allen took like 14 sacks this season, and Joe Burrow took like 53 or some like ungodly
Mhm.
number. So like, would you say that the Bengals gave Joe Burrow a lot of help because they had Jamar Chase and T Higgins and like that kind of, and whoever, I can't remember what their tight end is, but they have an expensive tight end.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and so like they've got a lot of help, but it's at the skill positions, whereas the Bills have a lot of help and it's on the offensive line. So it's like I can see the argument either way on that particular one. And like you said, the Bills were what the number two scoring offense or one of the top, couple scoring offenses in 2024. So it's not as big of a concern for me. But yeah, when it requires Josh Allen to be, Superman, say 5 times a game, I think that's a lot. And we want to help him out, especially as he's going to get into, this kind of third part of his career coming up now that he's won his MVP.